Cayman climate champions. Welcome back to a brand new adventure with me, Bella, your climate ranger. Today we are here at South Sound Beach to talk about an incredibly important marine species to our reefs here in the Cayman Islands, the grouper. And we're going to talk to a reef educator all about it. Are you ready? Because I am. Let's go. Incredible conservation work here in the Cayman Islands to protect our grouper populations, and in particular our Nassau Grouper. So I'm super excited to introduce you to our reef educator, Todd Bohannon. Thank you so much for coming, Todd.
Hi Bella, thanks for having me.
I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about why grouper are so important to us here in the Cayman Islands.
I would love to. So grouper are really important fish to the Caribbean for a lot of reasons. Culturally, the Nassau Grouper have been eaten traditionally around Christmas time, salted, and so it has a really important heritage with the Caymanian culture and Caribbean culture. As a fishery, Nassau are delicious, and so having them so that people can fish them into perpetuity, into the future, we want to have those fish there. But also, it's important to know that they're a top predator, and top predators on coral reefs have a really important top-down impact on the rest of the reef species. And so, you know, top predators like barracuda, Nassau grouper, sharks, you know, they weed out the sick and they keep those populations beneath them quite healthy. And if we don't have that, if we don't have those top predators keeping the bottom populations healthy, the coral reef gets out of balance. And there's a really important balance, and it's a careful balance that's being kept on the reef to keep everyone healthy. And so we lose that balance when we lose any species, especially an apex predator like the Nassau grouper.
And would you be able to tell us a little bit about their life cycle? So what do they go through to get through their life?
Yeah, so, you know, the Grouper Moon Project's all about the beginning of the Nassau Grouper's life, which begins on the full moon in winter, usually a couple of days after the full moon, at the aggregation site, which is called a grouper hole on Little Cayman, and usually a couple of days after the full moon at dusk. All of the thousands of Nassau will be swarming together at the aggregation site, and at dusk they will spawn. And then those gametes will go float around in the ocean for a day or two until they turn into larvae. And then those larvae over the next month or two slowly make their way back to their home shores and to the eelgrass and turtle grass. And that's where they're going to hide out for like the first year. After that, they'll go spend the next few years on near-shore shallow reefs. At around 6, they start to become reproductively active, and they'll move out to the deeper reefs. And at about 7 years of age is when they will start to go out to the aggregation and spawn with the rest of the fish.
Okay, and grouper in Grand Cayman, are they mostly here in Grand Cayman or in Little Cayman?
So there were traditionally several aggregation spots on Grand Cayman. They're difficult to research because they're much deeper. The site on Little Cayman is about 90 feet deep. That's really where the last viable aggregation that we know of exists in all of the Caribbean. You know, traditionally there was dozens and dozens of aggregations all throughout the Caribbean, all the way up to Bermuda. And now, you know, we think there's maybe just a small handful of aggregations left. And so this is really, you know, the last stand for the Nassau Grouper. Wow, so we're just a hot spot for grouper, aren't we? We are, it is. Okay, it's amazing. Let's head over to the dock and chat a bit more about it. Okay.
So, Todd, what are some of the threats that groupers face, and how have these changed over the past 30 years?
Well, you know, grouper, biologically, because they spawn, they all aggregate together in one spot every year at the same time. Fishing pressures really have been a huge problem for maintaining grouper populations. You know, it's very easy to go out on the spawning aggregation site and just start fishing and pulling out fish, and you could pull out 40, 50 fish at a time. And the problem with that is that they're out there to spawn, and usually they're getting caught before they've had time to spawn, right? And so you're taking all the reproductively mature fish out before they're able to reproduce. And when that happens, you have the populations just start to plummet. Overfishing and then habitat loss, is another big factor. Loss of coral reef and other healthy habitat for the Nassau to live in. And then more recently, climate change has begun to bear witness on the Nassau Grouper. We have researchers now out there on the aggregation site every year who are studying they'll go out and we'll collect a bunch of the gametes on the night of spawning, and we'll bring them back to a lab, and we'll put the larvae into different temperatures of water, and to study how they develop, as the water warms. Which we are already seeing. The water has increased over a degree just in the last 15 years that I've been here working on the project. And so what we see is that as the water temperature increases, it stresses out the babies. And so we start to see more and more of them not surviving.
And I suppose too, with more carbon in the atmosphere being absorbed into the ocean and ocean acidification,
exactly.
That's a problem for the reef.
Ocean acidification is a huge problem for the reef and for the baby Nassaus. When they're little gametes, they're just little, they look like a little pearl. That's really what they look like, and they're floating around. And when the acidity of the ocean increases, the membrane that keeps that little baby safe, it becomes eaten away. And so less of them survive because of that.
Oh,
yeah,
that's very sad. But thankfully, we have you guys working to protect them. And actually, I'm going to go on a little scuba adventure right now.
Awesome.
And go see some of these amazing predators face to face. And while I do that, do you think you'd be able to tell everybody a little bit about what you guys have done to protect these creatures and what you're still doing?
Yes, absolutely. So when I started on the project in 2011, the DOE had placed a restriction on just the aggregation site on Little Cayman. So the spawning site was protected for 7 or 8 years to begin with, and what we saw was the population maintained about what it was. It hadn't increased too much, and so we needed to push for more restrictions, a longer time. The issue was really that Nassau takes 6 or 7 years to become reproductively mature to go out and spawn, and the 8 years just wasn't quite enough to allow them for the population to rebound. After about 13 years of protections, we see the population has grown significantly to about 9,000 fish. And in order for us to maintain that, there's now some limits on how many fish and the size of the fish that fishers can catch. Climate change is really having an impact on marine species. And so the temperature at the aggregation site has increased by about 1 degree since I've been there. That in itself is going to be a big issue for Nassau to face into the future, and something that we're going to continue to study and research on the project. How was it?
My gosh, they are so beautiful.
Oh, aren't they incredible?
They're incredible. I hope everybody gets to see them too one day.
Yes, I mean, they're beautiful to see in person.
They are.
Everyone wants to see a Nassau when they come to the Caymans to dive.
So what can we be doing at home to protect these in our everyday lives?
Well, it's really important for all of us to know and understand that the coral reef is all of ours to protect, and it's a resource that all of us need to chip in to help take care of, so that we can have a healthy coral reef and healthy fish populations into the future. And all of us have a part to play in that, and you guys do too. And part of that can be not eating Nassau Grouper. If you go to a restaurant and you see that Nassau Grouper is on the menu, choose something else. The dollars that you spend influence what restaurants are going to have on the menu. And so if people don't buy Nassau, then the less of them will be caught and served in restaurants. So that's one thing that you can do. Another thing that everyone can do is really anything you can do to help maintain this healthy coral reef. And so participating in community cleanups of the beach, mangrove restoration projects, so again, anything that you can do to help keep this coral reef clean and healthy is going to help protect the reef and help protect all of the populations of fish, not just the Nassau, but everything that lives out there.
Thank you so much for telling us about the Nassau Grouper, Todd.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
remember that you are empowered and capable of making meaningful changes every day that will help the future of our islands. Now go get out there and explore your home, and I'll see you later, Climate Rangers.